Okay, so we are going to start our chapter 4, talking about the atomic theory and how it developed over time. So, to start, we have Democritus, who in 440 BC, so way back when, over 2,000 years ago, he was the first to propose that there was a particle that couldn't be cut. So, he said he didn't call it an atom, but was the first person who ever established that they thought there was something that was related to the atom. So, Aristotle, who's a very famous philosopher, disagreed with this, but Democritus obviously wound up being correct. In 1803, Dalton published his atomic theory. His atomic theory stated three things. First, that all substances are made of atoms, which we know is true. That atoms of the same element are exactly alike. So again, we know that is true. That's the definition of an atom. That is a pure, of an element. It's a pure substance with all the same types of atoms. And that atoms join with other atoms to make new substances, which we do know because we know there are things called compounds. In 1897, so just about 90 years later, Thomson discovered that there are small particles inside of an atom. So he did an experiment with something called a cathode tube. It has to do with it runs electricity through a glass tube, and this helped him discover electrons. So when he discovered these electrons, he created something called the plum pudding model. And the plum pudding model is basically a model that showed an atom with electrons evenly dispersed throughout the sphere shape. Plum pudding is a dessert that has plums and raisins stuff throughout, evenly spread throughout it. That's why he called it the plum pudding model. But he thought that these electrons were just spread equally all throughout this, sitting still and within the atom. In 1909, Rutherford did a gold beam test, and what he did basically was shot a laser beam at a sheet of gold, and then watched. He had a disc of metal around that gold, and wanted to see where the laser deflected to. So when he did that, it deflected. It deflected in some place. Deflected off some places, but it did not deflect as much as he expected. So he thought that it was going to hit a bunch of particles inside and then just deflect everywhere, and those lasers would be going everywhere throughout that circular disc. But what actually happened is most of it just went straight through, with some parts of the laser deflecting off. Because of this, he discovered that an atom is mostly empty space. It has the nucleus in the middle that is positively charged, but the rest of it, for the most part, is empty space besides those electrons that are flying around out there. So because the laser went all the way through, that meant that the atom didn't have much matter inside of it, or not enough much particles inside of it that were going to cause that laser to deflect off. Then, not too long later, 4 years later, a guy named Bohr made an atom model with energy levels for electrons. So before, when Thomson made his model, he thought the electrons were sitting still, just evenly spread throughout the atom. Bohr then made a model with energy levels for those electrons, which is what we follow more today. So there's certain energy levels that they get more energy as you go up that can hold more electrons, which we'll get into more as we go throughout the semester. But he created that new model in that way. So now, modern day, we have just a picture here to show, so you don't have anything to write down for that. But this is what we have depicted our atoms at. Now, there are always new discoveries being made. There's things called quarks inside of an atom that are super, super, super tiny. But the main gist of it is that we have protons and neutrons that are inside the middle of the atom, and we have the electrons that are outside in the energy levels. They're flying around in an electron cloud, but they're outside in the energy levels. So that is our atomic theory. That is how it's developed over time. It started way back in 440 BC. A lot of time in between went on before anybody really made any substantial discoveries after that. But that is what the theory has developed into now, is that we've got protons and neutrons in the middle, in our nucleus, and electrons are in the outside in the electron clouds. For extra credit, I want you to go ahead and I want you to write your name backwards at the top right corner of your notes. So write your name backwards on the top right corner of your notes. Alright,